be reading Grandpa Lop. Romper, stomper, bomper, boo. Tell me, do. Magic mirror, did all my friends today have fun at play? Today I see Marin, Isabel, Mason, Luke, Patrick, Kate, and Michael.
Grandpa Lop, written by Stephen Cosgrove, illustrated by Robin James. Deep within the forest of dreams lies a gnarled thicket of wood. The branches fold out far above to form a rich green umbrella that protects all the creatures that live here from the crystal spring showers of early April and May. The rains fall for about an hour, maybe two, and then the sun, with rays like golden ribbons at the county fair, streams through the leaves to the ground below. It was in this thicket that the rabbits of the forest lived and played all their lives. There were rabbits with big fluffy tails and rabbits with barely any tails at all. Short ones, fat ones, skinny ones, fluffy ones, and one very old rabbit named Grandpa Lop. Grandpa Lop was so old that his fur had long since turned gray. He wore a tattered scarf wrapped around his neck and always carried a twisted stick that he used for a cane. Every afternoon at about 2 or 3, Grandpa Lop would sit on his favorite stump and enjoy the warmth of the sun. He would sit quietly until, without his noticing, all the young rabbits would gather around his feet. They would try to be quiet, but it was so hard that a couple of them had to stuff their ears in their mouth to keep from laughing. Grandpa Lop would lean back on the stump, look around, and begin in a very soft, low voice. Once upon a time, in the land of mist and magical things, there was an enchanted forest. As he would slowly tell the tale, a very strange and wondrous thing would happen. Grandpa Lop would begin to stand straighter and straighter. The sunlight would flash from his brown eyes and sparkle throughout the forest, and his fur would glow. The little rabbits would be totally enchanted as he recounted his tale, because suddenly the very old Grandpa Lop would become the Wizard of the Wood. Most of the rabbits would get so caught up in the story itself that they wouldn't even know that he had finished. He would have to say, "Now, little bunnies, it's time that you were on your way." And with that, they would scamper back to the thicket in the wood. Now, the older rabbits were becoming more and more concerned about the little ones. One day, after the little bunnies had disappeared as usual, the older rabbits all gathered together at the thicket. "I wonder where they go," they asked themselves. "Every day they disappear at the same time. I bet they go off and see that old, useless rabbit," Grandpa Lop said one. "I just know they're up to no good." They chittered and chattered for a while, and then decided that when the little rabbits returned that afternoon, they would find out exactly what was going on. Sure enough, right on schedule, the little rabbits returned, and, as agreed, the older rabbits asked where they had been. "Well," said one, "we went into the forest to see Grandpa Lop, and he told us of a wondrous story about the woods. When he told us the story, the most wonderful, magical thing happened. Grandpa Lop became the Wizard of the Wood." "I knew it," fumed the older rabbits. "That old rabbit is teaching these kids nothing but a pack of lies." "But it's true," chorused the little rabbits. "When he tells us stories, stars and sparks appear. It's magic." The older rabbits hopped off to one side and muttered to each other, occasionally looking over their shoulders. Finally, they stormed back to the children. "We've decided that you're lying because there is no such thing as magic. For that you are going to bed right this instant with no supper, and from now on you are forbidden to see this Grandpa Lop ever again." With tears streaming down from their eyes, the bunnies all shuffled off to their beds. They had heavy hearts and very empty stomachs. The next day, as usual, Grandpa Lop sat on his favorite stump, soaking up the warm sunshine and waiting for the little rabbits to appear. He sat, and he must have dozed off, for he woke up with a start as the sun was just about to set. Much to his amazement, there were no baby bunnies, none whatsoever. Maybe they forgot, he thought, but surely they'll remember tomorrow. With that, he hobbled off to his burrow in the wood. The next day and the next, a saddened Grandpa Lop waited and waited for the children who never came. Finally, in desperation, he began hopping towards the thicket in the wood, searching for some sign of the bunnies. As he hobbled down the twisted path, leaning heavily on his cane, he came upon one of the older rabbits. "Good day to you," he said, and bowed stiffly. "I'm looking for all the little rabbits of the wood. You see, I used to tell them stories, but they've stopped coming to see me." "A good thing, too," snorted the older rabbit. All those bunnies ever learned from you was to lie and tell their own stories." Grandpa Lop was shocked. "But I never taught them to lie," he said. "I only told them the wondrous and magical tales of the forest." "You won't any more," huffed the rabbit as he quickly hopped back to the thicket. With a tear trickling down his cheeks, a much older and sadder Grandpa Lop went back to his burrow in the wood. With nothing to occupy his days now, Grandpa Lop wandered aimlessly around the forest. Once or twice he even went to the thicket in the wood, but as soon as he appeared, the older rabbits would herd the little bunnies to the opposite side. "Go away," they shouted. Old rabbits aren't wanted in our thicket." With that, all the rabbits scurried to their burrows. All alone, Grandpa Lop would hop away from the thicket and return to his part of the woods. The baby bunnies did as they were told, but they could never forget the magic of the Wizard of the Wood. Sometime, when they were all alone, they would whisper about how much fun it had been, but most of the time they would just shuffle about the thicket, making dust and feeling very sad. The older rabbits tried to cheer them up, and sometimes they would even tell a story, but it just wasn't the same. It got so bad that the little bunnies began to bicker among themselves. It would start innocently, with one bunny bumping another bunny, but it always ended in a tangle of arms, legs, and ears as they wrestled on the ground. Finally, some of the older rabbits couldn't stand it anymore and called all the rabbits together. "This has got to stop," they said. "With all this moping and bickering, nothing is getting done. Food isn't being collected, new burrows aren't being built, and winter's coming." "If we could just hear the magical stories of Grandpa Lop," said one of the little bunnies, "we wouldn't get into so much trouble." "But there's no such thing as magic," fumed the older rabbits. "You lied about that before." "We didn't lie, we told you the truth. And if you go with us, we'd show you that there really is magic." The older rabbits thought for a moment and then decided, "We will indeed go with you to your Wizard of the Wood, if only to prove that there is no such thing as magic." They all hopped into the forest and down the long, twisty trail to the stump where Grandpa Lop sat waiting. He sat, as he always had sat, sunning himself and gazing softly into the sky. The little bunnies quickly sat at his feet, while the older rabbit sat disbelievingly on the old rotting log. Grandpa Lop leaned back and, with a gleam in his eye, began in a very soft, low voice. "Once upon a time, in a land of mist and magical things, there was an enchanted forest." The older rabbits looked on in wonder as Grandpa Lop began to stand straighter and straighter. The sunlight began to flash from his bright brown eyes as he told the tale, and sparkles of magic began to twinkle in the forest around them. As the story wore on, his fur turned from gray to silver, and he truly became the Wizard of the Wood. All the rabbits, young and old, were totally enchanted as the story came to a beautiful ending. The moment was so beautiful, some of the older rabbits even had tears in their eyes. No one said a word, so afraid were they to break the magical spell, but one by one they rushed to Grandpa Lop and hugged him with all the love in their hearts. The older rabbits never apologized for the wrong they had done the bunnies and Grandpa Lop, for everyone knew that sometimes even older rabbits make mistakes too. But every day now, at exactly the same time, all the rabbits hopped from the thicket and rushed to listen to Grandpa Lop, who became the Wizard of the Wood. Listen to the older ones, their golden stories true. Then remember Grandpa Lop and the magic he showed you. The end.